Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
How would Donald Trump like to deal with his political enemies? He provided the answer in this fake video he posted on his Truth Social account that imagines former President Obama being arrested by the FBI and hauled off to prison.
Young man, 'cause you're in a new town, there's no need to be unhappy.
Lest you think this is just a joke, consider what Trump said just a few months ago.
The leader of the gang was President Obama.
In the Oval Office, he accused the Obama administration of treason and officially requested a Justice Department investigation.
Barack Hussein Obama, have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one they... Look, he's guilty. It's not a question, I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason.
This treason idea goes back to the time Trump was first elected, when his administration was under FBI investigation for collusion with Russia. The FBI director then was James Comey. Trump fired Comey in 2016 and now is using the U.S. Justice Department to try to put Comey in jail. Trump recently sent this Truth Social post to Attorney General Pam Bondi demanding that Comey and others be prosecuted, saying they're all guilty as hell. The resulting charges filed against Comey were thrown out of court, at least temporarily.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence.
Using the U.S. Justice Department to exact revenge on political enemies runs counter to the notion that American justice must be blind to politics, that justice must be fair. Tim Naftali is a presidential historian at Columbia University.
This president of the United States has taken it upon himself to erect a structure at the Justice Department that enables him to go after his perceived enemies. In our system of government, there has to be a trial, and our peers decide if we're innocent or guilty. If powerful people say in advance that we're guilty, that means we don't have justice, which means we are veering towards an authoritarian state.
There are more names on Trump's target list in relation to the proposed treason investigation. Obama's then National Security Advisor Susan Rice is sometimes mentioned.
We got Barack Hussein Obama. They're the ones, and then you have many, many people under them. Susan Rice, they're all there.
Susan Rice says Trump is perverting the justice system to attack political opponents.
It's not complicated. He said it himself, and he says it very frequently. He wants to do to his political enemies as much reputational, financial, psychological pain as he can inflict. And if he can get criminal convictions against any of his many, many perceived political enemies, he's delighted to do so.
Has Trump compromised the Justice Department?
Completely. It is a shell of its former self. Many of the most experienced career lawyers and civil servants in the Justice Department have been driven out, fired, or quit. And he's installed yes men and women, political lackeys, many of whom who have, no or little relevant experience. So the Justice Department has suffered a generational degradation in the quality of its people and its integrity and its perceived integrity by the American people.
Trump has not limited his enemies list to just Democrats. He has also targeted Republicans who he feels have betrayed him, like his own former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. After he was critical of Trump, Bolton's house was raided by the FBI. Then he was charged with improper retention of national security documents. Trump saw him as a turncoat.
I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy.
Well, he a lot of the behavior that you see from Trump in his second term We saw behind the scenes in the first term, he's just less inhibited about what he says publicly, to the point where it wasn't all that presidential in the first term. It's very, very unpresidential now.
I'm not a fan of John Bolton. I thought he was a sleazebag, actually. I thought he was a very dumb person, sort of a lowlife.
He believes in retributional activity to cause damage to people's reputation. In my case, on Inauguration Day, normally a pretty busy day for a new president, he canceled the Secret Service protection against the Iranian efforts to assassinate me, and then canceled the protection that other people were receiving from their former departments or agencies in government. So that's a pretty good sign of his overall intention and approach.
Trump's targeting of political enemies with the power of the federal government is not without precedent. Richard Nixon was famous for his enemies list, which was wide-ranging. Nixon secretly taped this conversation with his Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger.
The president was the enemy. The press is the enemy. The establishment is the enemy. The professors are the enemy. The professors are the enemy. Write that in the blackboard 100 times and never forget it.
Some in the Trump administration have explicitly endorsed that Nixon view of enemies. J.D. Vance appeared before a conservative convention in 2021, denouncing university professors to the delight of his audience.
And there was a wisdom in what Richard Nixon said approximately 40, 50 years ago. He said, and I quote, "The professors are the enemy."
I think that there are some people in the Trump orbit who think that the dark side of Nixon is something to be celebrated. The Republicans were often apologetic for the fact that Richard Nixon turned out to be anti-Semitic. He went against his enemies. He tried to use the IRS against his enemies. He wanted to use the FBI against his enemies. He wanted to shut down funding to universities that were not tough enough on anti-war demonstrators. Republicans tried to move away from that. They didn't want to talk about that element of the Nixon legacy. We now have people in power who are actually proud of that and feel that Nixon didn't go far enough, couldn't go far enough.
I think it's much more serious than the Nixon enemies list. I think it's a qualitatively different thing. It's very public. It's very long, and it's a moving target. You know, people come in and out as the president deems fit on a good day or a bad day. It's completely corrupting our judicial system, and those who say it's nothing different from what other presidents have done are either disingenuous or quite ignorant.
Richard Nixon and people around him who did not implement everything he ordered. They understood that Nixon could be impulsive, that he had a chip on his shoulder, that he was not always stable. Well, we have an administration now where the president's impulses, by design, are not curated. They become policy. So in that sense, Nixon is a useful counterpoint to compare and contrast what happens when you have guardrails and we don't have them around an impulsive president.
Many see Trump's use of the Justice Department to target political enemies as another sign that the U.S. is moving towards an authoritarian state. But in a late December interview, John Bolton disagreed.
Now, I think our institutions are strong. I think the Constitution is strong. I think in the past, I'd say 6 weeks, we've had a mood shift in Washington. I do think we're past peak Trump now. I think we've kind of come up and gone over the top of the hill. I'm not predicting the rate of descent or how far or how fast we'll go, but I think directionally that's where we're traveling.
I don't think we've hit peak Trump. I think the further we get into his second term, the more unrestrained he will be, the more desperate potentially he'll be, particularly if it looks like he'll be wiped out in the midterms or that his successor won't be elected.
James Comey said that the prosecution against him failed because it was unjust and incompetent. Does their incompetence play into this?
Their incompetence was far more evident in the first term than the second term. But I don't count on their incompetence to be a factor that should give anybody any better sleep at night. They are far more prepared. They are far more experienced. Trump has surrounded himself with yes men and women who have no loyalty, it seems, to the Constitution and loyalty only to him.
While Richard Nixon's law-breaking behavior was restrained by members of his cabinet and ultimately stopped by Republican members of Congress who forced him to resign, it is pretty clear that Donald Trump does not face any of those obstacles in his campaign of retribution. And his capture of international enemy Nicolas Maduro is likely making him feel more invincible.